Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Meir Hatina, and I'm honored to open this morning session titled Islamic Movement in a Changing Reality. You can hear now? It's better. Let me start with a few opening remarks. The popular uprising that swept the Arab world in 2011, often depicted as the Arab Spring, have illuminated the political maturity of the masses and the vitality of the Arab civil society. This was an authentic and spontaneous protest from below. Its mobilizing force was mainly social networks and internet, and its mottos were the struggle against tyranny and corruption and the widening of personal and political liberties. The Arab Spring took the Islamic spectrum by surprise, marking the start of a new and crucial phase in its modern history. On the one hand, the protest events open up new opportunities for such reformist Islamic movements as the Nahda in Tunisia or the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt to upgrade their political status and even to gain state power after a long period of suppression and political exclusion. On the other hand, the 2011 event posed various dilemmas and challenges to these movements, the most profound being the issue of democracy and economic relief. After all, freedom and social welfare, rather than the implementation of the Sharia, were the slogans of the Arab Spring. An even more serious predicament was presented to militant Islamic movements, given the fact that the ultimate goal of changing the political order was achieved mainly by non-violent civic means. Significantly, Al-Qaeda is the great loser of the Arab Spring. No less significant is the debate within Palestinian Hamas, whose leader Khaled Micha'el advocating greater use of soft power and the popular resistance against the Israeli occupation, a strategy which has proven itself in the Arab milieu. The confrontation by Islamic movements with the new reality created by the 2011 protest events will be addressed in this session by three distinguished scholars. Each one will have about 20 minutes. The first speaker is Professor Emmanuel Sivan. Professor Sivan is a renowned scholar on Middle Eastern affairs. He chaired the history department at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and has been a visiting professor at leading universities worldwide. Professor Sivan was the editor of the Jerusalem Quarterly and has written numerous books and articles about Islam fundamentalism and politics in the Middle East. He is the author of numerous books, including Radical Islam, Arab Political Myths, and Strong Religion. Professor Sivan's lecture is titled The Challengers. Please.
Let me begin by telling you a story which has been told to me 4 days ago by an Egyptian friend whom I haven't seen since my last visit in June, and asking him, how are things? He says, I'll tell you a story. Okay. An Egyptian dies and goes to heaven. He's waiting in the anteroom to being assigned where he should belong. And while the angel is working on his papers, he sees that there are a lot of clocks on the wall. He asked the angel, why do you have these clocks? He said, oh, those clocks, we are the Egyptian section. We use it in order to monitor the behavior of important Egyptians. Why do you need a clock? He says, every time that one of these eminent Egyptians tells a lie, it moves 1 hour. The clock which is assigned to him is moving 1 hour. Could we try it? He says, look, this is the one of Muhammad Abdu, the founder of the Islamic Enlightenment. never moved. He never told a lie. The second one, to the left, is Hassan alBanna, the founder of the Brothers. From time to time, he was telling a lie, but basically, he was a straight man. It's, as you see, it stands between 3 and 4. He says, and what's the other one? The other one is very curious. He says, this belongs to Dr. Mursi, the supreme guide of the Muslim Brethren today. The hands are moving all the time. We're even using it as a ventilator. So it's not a great story in terms of humor, but he says that it's a story which makes the rounds. And I'm saying this, and I'm using the story as a way of not speaking about the topics that everybody is writing about. What will they do when they are in power? They have no administrative experience. Do they really believe in democracy? Are they going to put the veil? You have read all the speculations. Nobody knows. And it's better to be honest on this. There are certain things we know. For example, that the Muslim Brothers, the major organization, which is behind the Freedom and Justice Party, have not changed their negative views about democracy. And the best proof for it is the behavior and the sayings of the Wasat Party, made of dissidents of the Muslim Brothers, who really believe in democracy, and he thought it very seriously. How can one adapt a religious organization, and an extreme one at that, to such a situation? Beyond that, we know nothing. One can speculate. If one is a journalist, one is bidden to write about it, a lot of hogwash. And this is why I want to speak about 2 other topics about which we know. And the second of these 2, I think, is not well known. The first is known, but nobody is taking it into consideration enough. And the idea is, 1, that the political scene suffers from an extreme case of fragmentation. It used to be that the left had the monopoly on being fragmented. Not anymore. In Egypt, the center, the liberals, the right, let's call the Muslim Brethren and their and parties of the same, there are at least 7 in each section. I'm speaking only about those which got 1 member elected to the People's Assembly. It makes the life, and it makes, above all, crystallization of policy very difficult. Even in the Freedom of Justice Party, my friend who follows those things more closely than I can, he says that the rift between the older conservative generation and the young generation, which was very much influenced by the Maidan al-Tahrir liberals, is growing all the time. That because of the elections, nobody did anything about it, but it's going to tell. Let alone if you have the Jama'ah Islamiyah, the former terrorists, the Wasat, which I mentioned, and so on and so on. This is the first phenomenon against which whatever happens on the political scene, and whatever the specific problems create crisis. For example, should one have the election of the president before the constitution is installed, or the other way around, etc.? How many jobs will be given? Will the top administration, the middle administration, really be purged It has not yet until now. For example, only 14 governors of provinces have been replaced. And one should remember this and know that all this plethora of contradictory, self-contradictory declarations is in good part because they have to speak to different audiences. It used to be said, I think, about Harold Wilson, Prime Minister of Britain, that when do you know that he is lying on television? When he's moving his lips. So, and the idea is that the more fragmented the scene, the more difficult is to know, is for Egyptian party to know. What we think about it really doesn't matter. At least not now, and I hope it wouldn't matter in the few years to come. And the second thing, which I think very few people speak about, but from talks with, especially with people of Ibn Khaldun Center, I'm becoming more and more convinced that it is the basic structural, sociological trend which under the ground is moving this whole process, this whole bizarre process in a way which has erupted unbeknownst to anybody. And this is, I would say, something like, and I'm choosing my words with caution, a kind of tidal wave of revolt against authority. The country which was one of the most hierarchical after India, in which there was such a respect, is now knowing teachers in revolt against principals, firemen in revolt against commander of the station, not on money. Strikes related to money, especially among industrial workers, is something which is very well known in Egypt. Above all, on dignity, which is related in their eyes to justice. You have it at the upper levels. Students revolt against the administration of the universities. Professors, which in Egypt are known to be a very timid lot, revolt against the president, appointed, of course, by the regime, and so on and so forth. So we are having here a non-acceptance, if I can put it that way, of any authority, which is becoming more and more the characteristic, at least, of urban Egyptians. Nobody, even at least among the people I talked about and in the press, which has really become very pluralistic, that's one of the great achievements already of the revolution, knows what's happening in the countryside. In a way, they are more afraid, of course, when the waves will come from the countryside. So a country which is undergoing such a huge change in attitudes and consequently in behavior is a country you don't know how it will go. Egyptians don't know how it will go. My friend, when we talked about it, and we talked about the revolt against the hierarchy a number of times, reminded me that when I first came to visit him in Heliopolis, Ain Shams, I told him a story which struck me on the way. On the boardwalk, three houses near his, which I was looking for, there was a huge Mercedes, of course, blocking the passage of people on that street. And people stand around and they speak their resentment. How do they dare? I mean, those people higher up, they don't know. I mean, how can we sell our goods, etc. at a certain moment, the door of the house opens, and a man in livery, you know, dressed like, I know, one of those porters of luxury hotels, comes out with some files. Obviously, the driver of which has been doing some errands for them. And everything changed. Everybody says, Salam ya Basha, how are you ya Basha? Give our regards to your great master, etc. He told Emmanuel, you have seen hierarchy in action. Now these attitudes, says my friend, but you see it also in the press, is disappearing. And remember, the organization which is in charge of dealing with them is the army, the most hierarchical organization possible. So it's not only the clumsiness of the army, it's their lack of political savvy, which is in a way very, very surprising, because those are generals which are very political and have been in power for 1 decade or two. A crisis is going to come, a series of crises, which nobody knows what the results will be. It will be a different Egypt. We don't know if this will be something which will take perhaps years. But mind you, the result might not be a democracy and pluralism. But this is a country undergoing as a mental results of the huge migration from the countryside to towns, from towns to cities, from cities to Alexandria and Cairo, is undergoing a change, a very important change. Those like my friend, who is a former diplomat, of course, in power, they shudder. But even the young generation doesn't know what happens. He told me that on the first day of when everything erupted, 25 January, his son, who is very more liberal than his father, went to Maidan al-Tahrir. Daddy tried to stop him, and he said, it's not for nothing, Daddy. Like in previous times, we are going to have 20 to 30,000 assembled there. 2 hours later, he calls Daddy and tells him, totally shocked, we have 200,000. So nobody knew. And everybody who tried to introduce a determination into the process is wrong. Some observers, I was not among them, so I'm not trying to justify myself, say that the regime itself is hollow, does not believe in any great idea, just wants to keep it, its assets, etc. And you know the whole question of passing the power. But the strengths and the social strengths of this phenomenon is unbelievable. Let me give you one example among many. On 9 October, there is yet another altercation between Copts and Muslims in Aswan over problems of Coptic girls supposedly joining Islam and then being taken by force by their families. Nobody really knows, but there was a huge altercation with about 20 people dead. It has happened before. This is Aswan, after all. This is the south. But what happens? Tens of thousands of Copts go into a demonstration in Cairo. They have learned that you need the media. The media goes only to Cairo. The media goes only to Maidan al-Tahrir. So they did it. They're very well chosen, not actually Maidan Tahrir, but another Maidan very close to it. Anyhow, the press covered it. And of course, the army came, and the army tried, in its usual clumsy way, I don't think it is determined, to put an end to the whole business. And 29 people were killed. Lo and behold, all of them were Coptic. So this is a change of mores which we really don't know what can come out of it. And the questions related to the balance of power in the Middle East, etc., which are interesting so much for international commentators, are dwarfed as against this phenomenon. And when my friend was telling me with more details about this phenomenon, I was reminded of famous lines in a poem by Winston Oden about such moments. When I quoted it to my friend, he says that Oden is maybe a prophet. And the lines are as follows. The cutlery is cracked. The ladies die. All the oracles are wrong. We suck our thumb or sleep. The game is showy and long. What we are facing in Egypt will be both low, slow, and gamey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for your insightful presentation, though it was a short one. The Arab Spring also remake Islamic political scene by introducing new elements or actors. Most prominently the Salafis, which in Egyptian case won 25% of the votes in the recent parliamentary elections. The Salafis are also the topic of the second speaker, Dr. Mohammed Al-Atawneh. Dr. Al-Atawneh is a senior member at the Department of Middle Eastern Studies at Ben Gurion University of the Negev. His research focuses on contemporary Islamic issues, including politics and governance, Islamic law and modernity, and Islam in Israel. In 2010, he published his book, Wahhabi Islam Facing the Challenges of Modernity, Dar al-Iftah in the Modern Saudi State. Currently, Dr. Al-Atawneh is working on a book, manuscript on Islam in Israel. His lecture for today is titled, A New Actor in the Middle Eastern Politics, the Egyptian Salafists.
Thank you, Meir. A friend from Ben Gurion University asked me in Hebrew, he called me last week and asked me, who are these Salafim? Snipers. I offered, to him to come to this conference and to hear about the whole phenomena of the Arab Spring and in general and on the Salafim in particular. So the emergence of the Salafi party, Hizb al-Nur, with almost 25% of Egyptians' votes, being the second political power after the Ikhwan, indicate a new actor in the Egyptian and the Middle Eastern politics. Until now, Egyptian Salafis from all rainbows have avoided participation in the country's politics for religious, ideological, and practical reasons. They utterly reject democracy, constitutional law, and parliamentary for being at odds with the Sharia tenets as interpreted by them, by the Salafis. The decision, therefore, of entering politics by the Dawah Salafiyya, one of the most important Salafi groups, is a breakdown in the historical Salafi attitudes toward politics. Thus, it has sparked an increasing heated debate among the Salafi community over the political participation and over a wide range of issues related to politics and governance, including democracy, elections, political parties, parliament and legislation, civil state, relationship with non-Muslim minorities, especially the Copts, civil vis-a-vis theocratic state, and so forth. In this paper, I provide a snapshot of the Salafi debate over the participation in politics with emphasis on the question, what had changed in the Salafis' approach to politics to have paved the way for political participation? I focus on the Noor Party, established by Dawah Salafiyya, as mentioned before, one of the most popular Salafi streams in Egypt today. But let's begin with a glimpse on the question, who are the Egyptian Salafis? Nobody knows exactly how many Salafis there now are in Egypt. Yet, Salafis may be found within official organizations and the groups and as independent. Among the most prominent groups, first, Al-Jam'iyya Shari'iyya, the Sharia Association established in Cairo in 1912 by Al-Azhar cleric Mahmoud Khattab al-Subki, with an aim to purge Islam of what is considered deviations of forbidden innovations. The second, Jama'at Ansar al-Sunnah, Association of Supporters of the Sunnah, established in Cairo in 1926 by also Al-Azhar cleric Mahmoud Hamid al-Fiqi. And third, Al-Dawah Salafiyya, the Salafi call, established in the 1970s in Alexandria by a group of students who refused to join the Ikhwan movement. Fourth is Salafiyya al-Madkhaliyya, which originated in Saudi Arabia under influence from Saudi Salafi clerics or circles, and entered Egypt with the return of Egyptians working in the Gulf after the Gulf War in 1991. And fifth, Al-Haraka al-Salafiyya min ajl al-Islah, or the Salafi movement for reform. This group rejects participation in politics while place emphasis on preaching or dawah activities. In addition, there are many groups not bound by a particular organization or independents who present themselves as followers or disciples of a certain sheikh, among whom are Muhammad Hassan, Muhammad Hussein Yaqub, Abu Ishaq al-Huwaini, Usama Abdul Azim, Mustafa Adawi, and others. Today, there are a number of parties who refer to one of these Salafi groups. Most important is Al-Noor Party, which refers to Al-Dawah Salafiyya. Other parties are Al-Asala, Al-Fadila, Al-Islah wal-Nahda, Al-Bina wal-Tanmiya, and Hizb al-Ummah al-Jadid. The common goal of the Salafi movement is to restore the early Islam of the Prophet Muhammad and his immediate successors, and to make it the dominant factor in both private and public life. But let's check the question, why now? Why politics now? In principle, Salafis approach politics based on the principle code to be concerned with politics but not engaging on it. In Arabic, الانشغال بالسياسة وعدم الاشتغال بها. Set in early 20th century by Sheikh Mahmoud Khattab al-Subki, the founder of Al-Jam'iyya Shari'iyya, the Sharia Association. Yet Salafis explain that their historical show of politics was not because of religious or ideological causes, but was because of the corrupted political system that principally based on the Machiavelli's notion of good ends justify bad things, but also on practical reasons manifested in the elections, which were a mere show meant to lend the regime an appearance of legitimacy. Sheikh Yasser Burhami, the founder of the Noor Party, noted, quote, Our previous show of participation in elections was not because religion has no place in politics or because politics have no place in religion. We believe that Islam is the decisive authority in all domains of life, including politics, unquote. Sheikh Burhami added that before the revolution, the balance of power that forced anyone who entered his realm to make concessions, and because of the disgraceful forgery of the elections with the opposition, nothing but a means of sprucing up the dictatorial regime's image as democratic. After the revolution, a great change occurred which allows Salafis to enjoy those advantages of democracy which are in line with the Sharia. Today, according to Burhami, there is a great deal of freedom which prevents anyone from forcing consciences about others. Quote, "The day we are forced to give up the fundamental tenets of our faith, we will no longer be able to participate in the political process," however, he added. However, Sheikh Burhami's explanations of why now it is possible to enter politics seem to be rejected by other Salafic circles, particularly the radicals, who still relate to the Egyptian political system as corrupted. Consequently, participation in the elections evoked rage among radical Salafis and led to heated legal debate among two camps of pros and cons of political participation. For Sheikh Ahmad Ashush, a former leader of Salafiyya al-Jihadiyya, who was recently released from prison in the wake of the revolution, participation in election is a religious crime. In an article titled "The Noor Party Between Islam and the European Jahiliyyah," Ashush accused the Dawah Salafiyya and its leader Sheikh Yasser Burhami of following Western political principles set by philosophers of social contracts and political science. In his word, quote, "Suddenly we found that this group, Dawah Salafiyya, turned on form its well-known doctrines for the favor of new ones based on principles set by philosophers of the social contract in Europe, such as Hobbes, Locke, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Montesquieu, Bentham. The Noor Party went even further when providing advocacy for Western values and principles in its political reform," unquote. According to Ashush, participation in politics by Noor Party is carrying out many violations, mukhalafat, of Islamic law, as it accepts, for example, the principle of man-made laws that undermines the principle of Allah's sovereignty or hakimiyya. For him, government and legislation are the prerogative of Allah alone. Thus, men do not have the authority to make their own laws or to decide whether to implement the laws of Islam. Al-Noor's party response on this and other critique regarding their entering into politics was ambivalent. On the one hand, Sheikh Burhami and other Salafi members who advocate participating in politics still approach democracy as evil. Yet, given they have no other choice for promoting their religious goals and objectives, democracy is inevitable. They found support of their decisions of participating in politics on some Islamic legal principles such as darura or necessity, maslaha, or public interest, and the principle choose the lesser evil in order to avoid carrying out complete evil for lack of any other choice, and realize the highest benefit of the two choices. This is a very classical Islamic legal term. On the other hand, Noor Party rejects the radical denouncements of democracy as a whole that seem to be based on the cliché, take it or leave it. According to Sheikh Burhami, there are two concepts of democracy. The first, democracy as ideology and ideal of the rule of the people. And secondly, democracy as political mechanism such as free elections. So according to him, or to Burhan, while they reject out of hand the democratic ideal, they do accept its political mechanism. In Sheikh Burhan's word, quote, the concept of democracy has developed, and today it encompasses both this idea and the democratic mechanism. The idea itself we reject out of hand, but in the current balance of options, the democratic mechanism, i.e. the method of holding elections and of deciding all matters according to the will of the majority, seems to be the best option available, or the lesser evil, unquote. Moreover, for Noor Party, democracy was a broad and flexible concept that can be tailored to the particular character and culture of the Egyptian people. In an article posted by Noor's official website titled "Toward Liberating the Concept of Democracy," the author, Dr. Abdel Fattah Madi, explained that democracy is segmental and could be shaped by every society to accommodate its needs. According to him, democracy is a human invention that many cultures had a hand in shaping. It's not a patently Western product, as some believe, though it was developed in the liberal Western countries. It has also proved successful in Malaysia, India, Japan, and Latin America. Therefore, democracy would not undermine the fundamental values of society or the supremacy of Islam as a religion and ideology. Since the religion streams were vastly popular among the public, democratic elections could serve them as a means of attaining power, following which they could shape the country according to their will. Yet, in tailoring democracy to their needs, Salafis seems to exceed the notion of democracy as a ruling mechanism and actually has adopted some democratic tenets in a broad sense. This is clearly manifested in the Noor Party platform, which states, for example, quote, the party advocates establishing a modern state founded upon modern principles, which respect freedoms and rights, honors and values of transparency and integrity, and is based upon the separation of the legislative, judiciary, and executive powers that should be elected by the people, unquote. These contents further illustrate the ambivalent approach by a Noor Party towards democracy. To conclude, Salafis from Al-Noor Party seem to accept the political game in a grudging manner. Thus, they show ambivalence toward democracy and its components. This is manifested in their acknowledgement of the contradictions between their ideological and moralistic premises and some democratic values and the practices such as freedom, equality, man-made law, etc. Yet, Salafis realize that entering the democratic game is inevitable from promoting their lofty aims of implementing Sharia in both private and public life. For this end, they distinguish between democracy as ideal and ruling mechanism. While they reject often the former, they do accept the later. In actual fact, Salafis' attitudes toward politics seem to be shifted, and they are now approach the Egyptian realpolitik in a more lenient manner. This is manifested in their platform that indicates the acceptance of some fundamental democratic principles, such as the power of the people to elect their ruling authority, legislative, judiciary, and executive powers. The remaining question is whether Salafis are going to assimilate other Middle Eastern political actors, or they will drag the Middle Eastern politics along with the Ikhwan to more Islamization. Only time will tell. Thank you very much.